Hello, dear viewers. So today I am actually out of in another place, and I can't shoot normally. I don't have my uniform or my gloves, so forgive me for that. Today I want to talk about nationalism in other country outside of South Asia. The country I want to talk about today is Israel, and I want to talk about the violence that has erupted in the al-Aqsa Mosque. Let's begin. So, the storming by Israel of the al-Aqsa Mosque. The timeline of the events. I want to start with this before I talk about my opinion of the events. It started in March and continued in April when 14 Israeli civilians were killed in attacks by Palestinians. The Israeli Defense Forces raided the West Bank in response, killing 16 Palestinians. The number consists of both civilians and terrorists. Now, I want to make note of this, the fact that in the attacks by Palestinians, only civilians were killed, while in the response raids by Israelis, 16 Palestinians, both civilians and terrorists, were killed. This shows that terrorists are intermingling with civilians, and civilians are getting caught in the crossfire, very sadly. So it's not that Israel is targeting civilians. However, the Palestinians deliberately targeted civilians, which is much worse and much more dangerous. On the 14th of April, Israel arrested six members of an extremist Jewish movement called Returning to the Mount, who were planning to sacrifice a goat on Temple Mount. On 15th of April at around 4 a.m., Palestinian protesters were marching with Hamas and Palestinian flags in the location around the mosque, according to the police. The protesters threw rocks at the Western Wall, which is a place of worship for Jews. Police responded with tear gas and stun grenades. Protesters attacked police officers with stones, injuring three. Some of the rioters, I'm now going to refer to these people as not only protesters but also rioters because they're protesting violently, which is a riot. They barricaded themselves in the mosque. At 9:30 a.m., the police entered the mosque and arrested some of the Palestinians. The police evacuated the worshippers with police batons as stun grenades and firecrackers used in the clashes caused a massive plume of smoke to go off. 6 hours later, the police left and the mosque's routine went on without any incidents. 158 Palestinians were injured. 470 police approximately were detained by the Israeli forces. On the 16th of April, 160 people were still detained, but 200 detainees were released after questioning. So this shows that not, first of all, everyone who was detained was not uh, guilty or was not proven uh, of committing any crimes. However, it also shows that Israel isn't blindly arresting people. They are releasing people who are innocent. Then, on the 17th of April, the Palestinians threw stones on three buses headed to the Western Wall. Seven passengers were injured. Police officers again entered the mosque saying that Palestinian crowds were trying to prevent non-Muslims from entering the mount. Nine people were arrested. So yeah, a similar pattern we can see emerging. On the 18th of April, the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Jordanian Foreign Minister Ayman Safadi discussed the situation. Blinken said the status quo must be upheld. I will discuss the status quo later. On 22nd of April, Israeli police stormed the mosque after Palestinians threw stone at them. And on 29th of April, a few days ago actually, the police again entered the mosque. So that's the basic uh, the timeline of events. Now let's look at it in detail. Uh, Yeah, so we can see that first, from the beginning, Israeli civilians are attacked by Palestinians. The IDF responds. On the 15th of April, Palestinian protesters marched with Hamas, which is a terrorist organization's flags. They threw rocks at the Western Wall, and then police responded. And some of the rioters barricaded themselves in the mosque. 9:30 a.m. Police entered the mosque. 100, and then we can see again on 17th of April, Palestinians threw stones on three buses headed to the Western Wall. 7 passengers injured. Then police officers entered the mosque and 9 people were arrested. So 22nd of April, Israeli police stormed the mosque after Palestinians threw stones at them, and the police entered the mosque again on 29th of April. This was also again due to a response to some violence committed by Palestinians. So we can see that each of these is incidents are being started by Palestinians. This is a pattern of behavior. Why they're doing this, I don't know. I can just say that they are. The history and importance of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The Al-Aqsa Mosque was built on top of the Temple Mount, which is widely known as the most holy site in Judaism. Several decades after the death of Prophet Muhammad, Muslims believe that Muhammad was transported from Mecca to this location and during a journey, and Muhammad also led prayers towards the site until the 16th or 17th month after his migration from Mecca to Medina. It is the third holiest site in Islam. The first is the Kaaba, and the second is the Al Masjid al Nawabi in Medina. The control over the mosque is transferred to the Islamic Waqf Trust, which and the control of the mosque was transferred to the Islamic Waqf Trust after the 1967 war. This was done by Israel and Jordan in agreement. This and Jordan still has some influence over the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is why uh, Secretary of State Blinken spoke to the Jordanian foreign minister. And by referring to the status quo, that's what he meant, that um, it would still be a Muslim place, but Israel can have some responsibility for the security situation there. And so, till this date, both Israelis and Palestinians claim ownership of the mosque. Israelis because it is the site of the Temple Mount, while Palestinians claim it because of Muhammad's connection to it. Prophet Muhammad, sorry. Muslims in Israel and Palestine from East Jerusalem can pray at the Al Aqsa Mosque, and non Muslims are allowed to enter the site during visiting hours but are not allowed to pray there. So, where do I stand on this? First of all, it is very unfortunate and tragic that so much violence has occurred, especially in a holy place like the Al Aqsa Mosque, which is holy for both Muslims and Jews. Hopefully, both communities can resolve as to the ownership of it. And I do want to mention again that Jewish extremist group, which I was talking about, which tried to enter the mosque and commit a sacrifice there. That is because, like I said, it is the site of the Temple Mount, and they believe that the mosque should be removed and the Mount Temple should be rebuilt. This reminds me of the Ram Mandir movement in India, which was a movement to rebuild temple in the birthplace of Ram, where a mosque had been built by a Muslim invader named Babur. Now, um, so now how that went about was that during the 1990s, a group of Hindus destroyed the mosque, and uh, riots spread out throughout the country, mainly in the north, and hundreds of people were killed, and communal violence continued for several uh, years actually, based on this incident and subsequent violent acts from both communities, Hindus and Muslims. And however, once it was proven by the Archaeological Survey of India that there indeed was a temple that was originally there, then the Supreme Court in 2019 declared that the temple should be rebuilt and the mosque should be built in an area close to the original place. Now, how I view it is I think that Hindus had a right to get that mosque rebuilt, but it should have been done in a legal manner and should not have been done illegally, and which is what the Jewish movement I spoke about is trying to do in Israel in the al-Aqsa Mosque, which is dangerous. If they want to rebuild the Temple Mount, they should do it legally, not illegally like this. And yeah, I think that the Palestinians, specifically Muslims, are responsible for the recent violence because in each incident they started the violence by throwing stones and sometimes even Molotov cocktails. So I hope both sides can come to some peace and agreement, and finally, maybe sometime in my lifetime, the Israeli Palestinian crisis can end. So that was my video for Israel. If you want to see other videos about nationalism in a country outside of South Asia, click on this playlist. If you want to see my previous video, click on this video. If you want to see the sources I use for this video, click the links in the description below. Thank you for watching. Vande Mataram.